There are 7 operators in Rainbow Six Siege that I've chosen to represent the 7 deadly sins: sloth, pride, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and greed. Let's start off with the easiest sin to fall into, which is sloth. Sloth is defined as a reluctance to work or make an effort, also known as laziness. The operator I've chosen to represent this sin is Echo. Echo players are about as lazy as it gets, and if you want proof of that, just listen to some of Echo's voice lines.
I'm going to lie down for a bit. Why do it yourself when robots do it better? I'll just relax here and let yokai do the rest.
Remember, folks, efficiency is just clever laziness.
Now, there's plenty more of those where that came from, but you get the idea by now. Echo's entire in-game character and playstyle is completely built around Echo being lazy and just letting his drones do all of the work. The raw definition of sloth. Not only is Echo sloth-worthy in his lore, but in the gameplay, actual Echo players are super lazy. A lot of times they'll just sit on their cameras the entire round, stunning people so their teammates can get stunned kills, which isn't a terrible idea, but the only issue with that is that it's an extra gun that's on the board that's not being used. You're essentially putting your teammates in a 4v5 to kill stunned players instead of just killing players outright. There is a time and a place to get on your Echo cameras, but I see a lot of Echo players completely across the map on their Echo cams the entire round because they want to get that really flashy play of being able to stun people off of the diffuser. I mean, even Echo's kit is catered towards just being lazy. You have that deployable shield, and all you have to do is sit behind the deployable shield, wait for somebody to swing you, and then just peek and shoot them. Very easy to do. You can sit on your cameras and stun people. You can stun people off of the diffuser. You can get on other cameras and just give callouts to your team, but the entire point of Echo is literally to just sit on cameras, because it's like Echo said, efficiency is just clever for laziness. One thing about Echo players is they actually know that they're lazy a lot of the times. That's just the playstyle that they like to have. They don't like to be all flashy like Warden players or go into gunfights like Ashe players. They just like to do their thing, and at least that they admit that they are slothful, which is not at all the case for the next sin of pride. Pride is defined as believing that one is essentially better than others, failing to acknowledge the accomplishments of others, or excessive admiration of the personal self. The operator who best matches this description of pride is Ashe. If there's one operator that I could pick that people have the highest ego on, it is Ashe players, by far. I think if you've played this game for more than 100 hours, you probably already know this. Ashe has 2 very good guns, the R4C or the G36C. One of them has more recoil, but with a higher kick, and the other one is a bit easier to control if you want to go for more headshots. They both also have ACOGs on them, and she's a 3-speed, making it to where if anyone wants to just run and gun like they're in Call of Duty, they can do so. This naturally just attracts players who have a high ego, because people with high egos like to swing everything and take gunfights because they think that they are the best aimer in the entire lobby. Now, even if that were the case, it's best suited on Ashe because she has the weapons and the speed to be able to make that playstyle viable. She also has an Ashe charge, which makes it just easier for you to rush because you can Ashe charge in soft walls, barricades, whatever it may be. So not only does Ashe's utility and kit make it just easier for egotistical players to play her, but it's almost natural. It's almost a perfect fit. People who play Ashe naturally are just prideful, which is why I made Ashe the sin of pride. But the rabbit hole on Ashe goes even deeper than this. We can go a few years back to when Bolo started playing the game and started getting popular. This was back before they nerfed quick laning, so you could lean faster and you could lean farther on your screen, making it an even more powerful tool for you to utilize when you got kills. They also hadn't nerfed the R4C recoil at the time, so rushing was even better on Ashe back then than it was now. With Bolo on the rise, showing people that you can actually play this game at a fast-paced way like you were playing Call of Duty, the rushing on Ashe, specifically on this operator, was just more popular because people saw Bolo rushing on Ashe specifically. He wasn't rushing on IQ, he wasn't rushing on Maverick because he wasn't even out yet, he wasn't rushing on any other 3-speed, it was specifically Ashe. So not only was Ashe's utility and guns really good at showing people that you can rush on this operator, but it was already popular because of a content creator and an entire wave of players that already were rushing on Ashe. Because, you see, not only do Ashe players want to be good with their gun skill on an operator that suits it, but they also all secretly look up to somebody that does it and does it very well. These types of players, though, typically suffer from a second sin if they lose in their Ashe rush, and that is the next sin of wrath. Wrath can be defined as rage, specifically in an inordinate and uncontrollable feeling of hatred and anger. The operator who best fits this description is Clash. Now, when I was thinking of making this video, and I was looking through all of the operators on this list, I was going to an operator for Wrath specifically that I thought people would use when they were angry, or when they were crashing out after losing a few rounds, and it was between Amaru and Clash, but I definitely feel like Clash is the most rageful operator that somebody can play. Let me explain. Clash as an operator is a pretty rageful operator. I mean, let's not even take the playstyle into account. Have you heard this operator's voice lines?
Gotcha, you twat! You fuckwits!
Yeah, she's just like a pretty angry operator. Like, you get the idea. And I think being able to use those voice lines against people and have them hear it whenever you're using Clash is just so satisfying. Like, if I'm crashing out, I've lost a few rounds and I play Clash, being able to curse at people as I'm shocking them just makes me feel better on the inside. It makes my heart grow like I'm the Grinch. Like, I swear to God, there's something about it that's just satisfying. Not only this, but having people go into the chat after you play Clash and just be annoyed at you and roast you just makes you feel so much better, because a lot of the times for you, it's just an operator that you play. It's just an operator that you play to annoy the shit out of the enemies and make them mad because you are actually mad on the inside. I can admit that. I know a lot of other people do that. It is what it is, and I think Clash perfectly embodies the sin of Wrath. Not only does Clash's playstyle and actual operator voice lines support this, but the fact of the matter is right now, we are in a shield meta, meaning there's a lot of Monty, there's a lot of rushes, there's a lot of blitz, and because of that, Clash is actually a perfect counter to this. Clash being able to shock Monty through his shield, or blitz through his shield, and also activate suppression and slow the shield down is a perfect representation of the player's wrath against the shield meta. If you don't know how to counter shields reliably and you're kind of just angry at them for running shields, a lot of the times you'll use that wrathful energy and just play Clash and shit on them. It's the perfect representation of the community's rage against the shield meta, which is why I think and I know that Clash as an operator is the perfect representation through the player base of the sin of Wrath. Somebody that actually represents their sin a lot better, though, is the sin of envy. The sin of envy is defined as the desire to have a quality, possession, or desirable attribute belonging to somebody else. The candidate I chose to represent this sin is Warden. Now, when you think of Warden players, you think of the same type of people as Ashe players, people who like to just run and gun. But Warden players specifically are a bit different, because Warden wasn't really popular until one Siege creator made it popular, and that is Spoit. If we rewind all the way back to the 1.5 times scope meta, this is where if an operator had a 1.5 times scope, they were actually played, when Oryx was one of the best roamers in the game purely because he had a scope. That is how powerful this scope was, and one of the operators that had the scope in question was Warden. Now, people weren't really playing Warden, because if you had to choose a 1.5 on a gun between Warden and Oryx or Mozzie, you're never going to pick Warden because his utility sucks. But there was one content creator that picked up Warden and made people realize the potential of having a low recoil SMG with the 1.5 times scope, and that content creator is Spoit. Most of you by now know who Spoit is because he's become increasingly popular throughout this past year. Through doing content collabs with Jynxzi, with Clicks, with a bunch of famous Twitch streamers, you get the idea this man is popular. And out of any content creator that I could think of, Spoit specifically made Warden 1.5 times scope very, very popular. And the reason that I think that Warden represents the sin of envy is because every single person that got inspired by Spoit to play Warden just played Warden because they wanted to be like Spoit. And if you look at the definition of envy, it's wanting either the possession of somebody else or the quality of somebody else. And the majority of the time that I saw Warden players playing Warden was because they wanted the quality of the aim that Spoit had. They were envious. It wasn't necessarily like an angry jealousy, like, I hate Spoit and I'm better than him, so I'm gonna play Warden and post clips on TikTok. Like, that's not really what it was. But people weren't really religiously playing Warden, and he wasn't the most picked defender until Spoit made it really popular to play Warden 1.5 times scope. That's just a fact. It wasn't just Spoit doing this as a content creator, but he definitely was the leading pioneer of it, in my opinion. And now, ever since then, every time I see a Warden player, even without the 1.5 times scope, that just runs around and tries to get a bunch of kills, it's because they're envious of the aim of other people that they watch and they want to try to replicate it. Content creators like Spoit, like Uzi, like Bolo, or any other really good aiming content creator that used Warden back in the 1.5 meta, or even that uses Warden now, which is why I think Warden is the perfect representation of the sin of envy. Now, you might not have seen that one coming, but I guarantee you are not going to see the next sin coming, which is the sin of lust. Lust can be defined as an over-obsession and overvalue over an object or an idea, often referred to in a sexual manner. The candidate I've chosen for the sin of lust is Yana. Now, it's no secret that video games in general, especially Siege, have some fan service in them, especially Yana. Yana with her elite skin is somebody that people simp over a lot. As somebody with a lot of hours in Siege, I've seen it almost every single day. You have clips on TikTok of people like looking up her skirt and shit. Like, you get the idea. People lust over Yana a lot, and it's half the reason that some people play her, especially if they have that elite skin. Another great example of this is that when Yana was released, she had a certain pose that showed off a part of her body that I, can't really say on YouTube, but you get the idea. People were actually lusting over it so bad that Ubisoft actually had to take out that pose in favor of the new pose that we have now, where Yana's just actually facing the camera this time. So as a community who plays an operator, the number one operator that I find they're lusting over is Yana. With a second place to maybe Ella, but that was more back in the day before Yana came out. Again, it's no secret that the Siege community likes some of the Siege women in the game. Gamers will be gamers. It is what it is. It's weird, I know, but it happens. And out of all of the Siege women, or even Siege men that some women are into, that I could find, Yana is by far the most lusted over operator in Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. I also want to say that after Yana lost her flash grenades and her 1.5, people started playing her less, and the only time I've actually seen people playing Yana to this day is the ones that have that elite skin that I talked about earlier. So, hey, the proof is in the statistics, the numbers don't lie. Not only do the numbers not lie about the sin of lust, but they also do not lie about the operator I've chosen for the sin of gluttony. Gluttony is defined as an overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. The operator that best fits this description is not Gridlock, actually. It's, funny enough, Fuse. Now, if we were talking about lore-wise who was the biggest glutton, obviously it would be Mrs. Gridlock, but gameplay-wise, what I think people who have a problem with gluttony would play in the game, it would actually be Fuse. Now, especially in lower elo, the only reason that people actually pick Fuse is because of the gadget. Specifically, they want to get kills with the gadget. They'll use all 4 Fuse canisters above the site just so that they can get a kill, commonly just putting cluster charges above where they think players will be playing because they like the idea of just having that thing in the top right of their screen that says that they got a kill. That's it. They're just gluttons over the fact that they like getting kills with their gadget. They could do it on Capcan, they could do it on any other gadget that has explosive damage, but they all choose to do it on Fuse because it's satisfying, the true nature of a glutton. Not only this, but Fuse also has a shield, and with the shield meta and the shield rework constantly going on right now, that's another reason that people glutton over Fuse. They like to be able to get the shield kills, the PMM pistol kills, and the Fuse kills. The only people that I actually see playing Fuse that aren't doing it for the ability is because they're doing it for the weapons, whether it be the pistol and shield, or the AK, or the really good LMG. They're just kill hungry. Keyword, hungry. Gluttony, you get the idea. They're just kill-hungry players, and that's the only reason they're playing Fuse, is because they want to get free kills. That's it. It's only until about like Diamond and Champion that you start coming across Fuse players that are doing it for actual utility, and even then, those players are just going to shoot the Fuse cluster charges as they're being deployed, so it's not like you'll be able to use him anyways, which is why the only people who actually play Fuse unironically are gluttons, which is why Fuse is the perfect, idealistic representation of the sin of gluttony. A lot of you might not agree with that take, but a take that I guarantee you'll be much more happy to agree with is the sin of greed. Greed is defined as the excessive desire for anything, especially in terms of wealth. The operator who best matches this description of greed is Doc. Now, how are Doc players greedy? Well, if you've played the game, you probably already know. Playing with a Doc player and begging for heals when you know for a fact they have all 3 of their stims up, because a lot of Doc players are so greedy that they just take all of the stims for themselves. They don't really share their stims because they don't really believe in their teammates because they have high egos. The Doc players, just to mention, are also the same type of people that play Ashe. So like I said, they're pretty prideful, but their biggest sin isn't pride. Their biggest sin is that they're so greedy that they never actually stim their teammates and they only stim themselves because they only believe that they're the ones that can win the fight. This is further shown through the loadout. You have an ACOG on a low recoil SMG. People who love to play these sort of guns are people who really believe that they're the only people that can get the kills on their team, so they force themselves to play the ACOG. It's very, very rare that you go into a ranked game and have a Doc that will actually stim you, even if you beg for it, even if you knife in front of their face to try to get their attention, even if you ask politely, these Doc players will not stim you. And it is the only operator that I can think of out of all of the operators in Rainbow Six Siege, which is over 70 by the way, that a player consistently uses an ability and doesn't share it with their teammates because they are so greedy. These players also typically will not set up site. They'll take their barbed wire and they'll put it next to where they are playing because they want it for themselves because they're greedy. And they also typically like to spawn peek with that ACOG that I talked about earlier because they're not going to set up site. They need to get to their spawn peek as fast as possible because they're greedy for kills. They're just greedy people, which is why Doc, as an operator, as people play him, is the biggest representation of greed in Rainbow Six Siege. But with that out of the way, my name's Alka, check out this next video, and I hope we'll see you there. Later.